lot about what's happening in the US today from an international perspective. But what's the view like from inside looking out? I'm very, very pleased to be able to speak with Mick Cornett, the mayor of Oklahoma City, who is here to speak with us. And we want to start right out and ask you, give us a sense of where Oklahoma is today in terms of its economy relative to the national economy, and how you would distinguish that, because all the numbers that we see appears to be telling a very different story. I mean, your unemployment rate is not what the national average is looking like. It's 5% rather than 9%. Your city budget is looking very strong. You're not as leveraged as many other cities in the U.S. And so, what is your perspective of the country from where you sit?
Well, we have separated ourselves from the national economy. The United States economy right now is not very good. Consumer confidence is very, very low. Politicians are struggling, turning on each other at gridlock, it seems, and the American public's getting fed up with it. I think in general, they are expecting their elected officials to create jobs. When they don't see that happening, they're upset and they're scared. Oklahoma City has separated itself from all of that chaos. Consumer confidence in Oklahoma City is very, very high. I'll give you as an example. I read somewhere that in the first week in August, consumer confidence was at some level, some historic low in the United States. I forget the exact number, and I forget how historic, but some level of historic low. That same week in Oklahoma City, we opened up a factory outlet mall full of shopping, 100% occupied. We had 161,000 people show up at the mall, shattering all industry records, and they've been keeping these records for 30 years. So the very same time period where consumer confidence is at some level of nadir, here in Oklahoma City, we have this huge influx of people ready and willing to spend money. And consumer confidence is so critical to driving your economy, because if people start sitting on their money, the money doesn't turn over.
So give us a perspective on Oklahoma City, the economy. It's not a city that's dominated by big name corporations. It sounds to me to be a city that is driven a lot by small business. It sounds to me to be a city which is quite spread out. So it's not just a city, but the value chain of the economy spreads out into the country and so on. What makes Oklahoma City a kind of an economy that you can practically ring fence from the national economy?
Here's what we did. In the 1960s, 70s, and 80s, we were very reliant on the energy industry, oil and natural gas. Well, the energy industry goes like this, and our economy went like that. So we went through this boom and bust cycle. Coming into the early 90s, coming out of one of those bust cycles, we specifically said we've got to diversify our economy. We made specific strategic decisions to move into areas like aviation, the biomedical sector. We made investments in tourism. We've always had a fairly strong government sector, and that's a good sector to have in a recessionary time. And I think that diversification has been key, because the energy industry has done pretty well, but we no longer are reliant on the energy industry. I think it's probably 4, 5, 6% of our employment, maybe 10% of our wealth, but still just a small fraction. And so, whereas a generation ago, people would have looked at a commodity price to determine Oklahoma's economy, they would have said, well, what's a barrel of oil? And what's a bushel of wheat? Today, you would say, what is the level of natural gas? You know, what's a cubic natural gas providing? But generally, we've diversified so much more.
Yeah, but still, would your detractors say that Oklahoma City is a lot to do with government as the anchor economy or economic driver?
I wouldn't say it's an anchor, but it's a really nice part of the economy to have.
And that's because?
Well, because those jobs typically have benefits. They're pretty stable. You know, there's not a whole lot of people getting laid off or hired, so it's a pretty stable part of the government force. And it's nice to have a significant government sector in your economy. Now, we can all argue that government's too big and needs to be downsized. That's a different argument. But what I'm saying is, as a mayor, do I like having a government sector in my economy? Absolutely. I think it's important
and
to have.
This is federal government? This is
It's
very
really
local?
all of them. We do have quite a few federal employees. We have a large Air Force base in our city. We also have a large Federal Aviation Association presence in our city, and then we're the capital of the state, so we have a lot of state employees.
Right. How long did it take for Oklahoma to come to that level where there's some kind of resonance between all the different constituents of the economy, from the time of losing that pole position during the oil and gas period?
Well, it's been very slow. The 1980s were very poor for Oklahoma, and 1990s were a little better, and then in this decade we've done pretty well. And so it's been gradual, but I would say in the last 7 or 8 years, our economy has been about as good as you're going to find anywhere in the United States.
And your ability to collect taxes, your sales tax invoices and your receipts have been looking very good.
Oh, we're in a boom time. Our sales tax revenue is up 5 to 10% a year in the last year or two coming out of the recession, and that's unexplainably high.
Okay, reflect with me this resonance you have in your economy, which is so different from the rest of the United States today. What do you think holds it together? And what is it that gives that sense of confidence for the community to tick and to continue shopping, as if they'll still hold on to their jobs and things will be fine?
Well, unemployment is low. As you mentioned, it's the lowest unemployment rate in the United States. That's part of it. There's still a strong work ethic in Oklahoma, so I think Americans as a whole are starting to become lazy and less likely to want to work. In Oklahoma, that strong work ethic still holds true. And we've also been very successful in building the quality of life. And I think in the 21st century, what you're seeing is the highly educated 20-somethings of the world who can live anywhere they want, people with choices, are being very specific and choosy about where they want to live. And we're winning a lot of those battles. So you have a lot of influx of highly educated people moving to Oklahoma City. The Kauffman Foundation, based in Kansas City, recently selected us as the most entrepreneurial city in the country, most startups per capita. And so these small businesses are tapping into that young talent pool, and it's all working. But it's that quality of life that Oklahoma City has created that's really the key, because in the past, people moved to where the jobs were. And in the future, the jobs are going to where the people are. And right now, the people are gravitating toward places like Oklahoma City.
Okay, let's project what you do have in Oklahoma outwards into the rest of the country. What do you think that the rest of the country could or should be doing better in order to look like Oklahoma?
Well, first of all, we have very little traffic congestion, and that's very important. I know people that live in Southern California that spend an hour and a half each way to work.
Okay.
Well, if you do that every day, that's 3 hours in your car. In Oklahoma City, that's probably 5 or 10 minutes. And that weighs down to the quality of life. Do you really want to spend your time in your car? We also have very affordable housing. A house in Oklahoma City that might cost $200,000 might be $1 million or more on the east or west coast. And so on the east and west coast, you have a young generation that's come up, and that American dream of owning their own home doesn't even seem achievable. In Oklahoma City, it's still very achievable. So we have a low cost of living, and we have higher than average salaries. And so there's a bubble there. There's a discretionary income opportunity. And when a person has discretionary income because their expenses are low and their salaries are high, they have money for things like restaurants and sports tickets and things like that, so they can enjoy life.